No, it was so cool, like to, a little bit intimidating, but I got over it quickly to kind of, join this group that, already has such rapport and like, such great like banter and like it worked so well for, even though none of them are like, experienced film actors, like there's already so much chemistry there already. Like they're already so naturally funny talking to each other. And I feel like that really comes through in the final thing, watching it and being like, oh, this is like, it works so well already. And it was funny. Like, I know the Kevin type, but there were some moments where I was like, oh my God, like, Kevin, are you all right? Like, these guys are ribbing you so hard.
So, here on Fun Yet?
Welcome to episode 3 of the Late Game Podcast. I'm Jeffrey M. Zucker, producer, co-creator of the Late Game, and I play Dr. John Calamino. And with me is my business partner, co-creator, writer, director, Jeff Tyner. What's up, man?
Hello. Just having fun.
Today, we're super pumped for you guys to get to hear from Alec Reusch, our lead in the movie. He plays Riley. He did a tremendous job. You'll hear little bit about how we initially connected with him. He's got a mostly theater background and a degree from Ohio State University. And tremendous actor that's, like I said, been in a lot of stage shows. He was recently in the show Once. Just really impressive skill set. We were really fortunate to have him, and excited for you to hear about his experience with us. All right, Alec Reusch, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's our third episode of the Late Game Podcast. The first one, Tyner and I talked about the origin, and then, while we had RA down in Charleston, we did an interview with him as well. And, we're just really excited to figure it out from other people's perspective, kind of see the late game process through your eyes.
Right. Yeah.
I'd love to just give the audience understanding of your background and sort of how you came upon the late game. Obviously, Tyner and I know that, but I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kind of talk about like my hockey background and my acting background and then kind of how they intersected for this. Um yeah, I was one of those kids where like my dad put me on skates when I was at 4, I think, cuz he played hockey. So started taking, skating lessons 4 or 5 and, I never played like competitively growing up, but I was in a house league and like my high school team. Um, and then also in high school, I got into doing plays and musicals. So that's kind of where I got started getting into theater and acting a little bit. Um, I didn't play hockey in college. I kind of set it aside. I loved it, but I found I didn't really have time. I wasn't sure where I'd like, put my sweaty gear in my like dorm room. Um,
It's
and
a lot of
then
effort, man. I
I
struggled in
know,
college
yeah,
too, because like you got to find somewhere to put all your stuff, and then you have to get to the rink, which can be harder in those days.
right.
And it seems like most sort of beer leaguers that we talk to had some period of their life that they've taken off from the game.
Yeah, definitely. And people I've talked to as well, like, I'll play pickup or something, and there's always someone like, yeah, first game back after, X number of years or something. And it's like, yep, coming off a big hiatus. So it's cool to see that everyone like kind of comes back to it eventually. Even though people take breaks.
Yeah, and I think the reason we always come back is just because of how awesome it is, right? Like, I mean, I played once or twice a year for about a decade before I got back into being a regular player. So it just once you get back, you remember why you were there.
Right, right. Yeah. And then when I moved out here to LA after I finished college, I like had free time again, and that's when I kind of like rediscovered my love for hockey, and got out the old gear and started playing again, and that's kind of when I found that's kind of when I got involved in this because I'd been playing a little bit, but I was still kind of just finding my way back into it, and then so yeah, finished college. I studied theater, came out here to try to start up an acting career, and I'm on all these like kind of websites to find like auditions and stuff like Backstage and like Actors Access, but totally out of left field I saw on none of those sites on the hockey players subreddit, there was a post about, hey, we're shooting a hockey movie. We're looking for skaters who are fine being on camera. So, all the work I do to try to find acting gigs, and it's this third party, like out of nowhere, is where I hear about the Late Game. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
you had an email there on the post, and I shot you an email like, oh, I'm an actor who can play hockey / a hockey player who can act. Here's my headshot. Here's my resume, and like, hockey experience, I guess. And then,
It
yeah,
I remember Tyner forwarding me that email right away too. And I think from our perspective, we were very excited to have an actor that plays hockey. Like that was our goal for the Riley role. We didn't know how good or not you were. But we kind of talked it through with you what you had done, whatever. And so we were kind of prepared. Like you were pretty good when you showed up, and like we were prepared though, like whatever we were gonna have to figure out if you were terrible.
I remember I kept expecting, because we emailed back and forth a couple times, and you sent me like this little monologue to read, which wasn't in the script, but just to kind of like, see where I was at. And like, we did a Zoom call, and I kept expecting you to say, all right, take a video of you, like, at a stick time, just skating
We
around a
meant
bit.
to.
Right. So, and that never happened. I was like, okay, I guess they're just taking my word for it. And then at one point during the shoot, I think early on, Tyner was like, yeah, you were the one guy I was worried about. Like, we didn't know whether you could actually play or not. I was like, yeah, you never asked for proof. So that was funny.
Yeah, I know. I remember that being in our plan. Like, oh, let's get a video of him on ice, but like,
Right.
just never
Just
materialized
so
on
many
our
things to
side.
think about. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was awesome. We were so thankful to find you from that Reddit post, and um, it made the whole process worth it. And it was important to us that anybody that played hockey in the movie like played hockey in real life. There's some of those hockey movies out there where like you can tell some of these people have never been on the ice.
Right. Yeah. And this isn't to like downplay, acting as like a craft or anything. Like, it's certainly hard work, but like it's way easier to teach hockey players how to act than vice versa, than to teach actors how to play hockey, like from nothing.
Yep. And I think Miracle
So,
showed that as well. They generally used
right.
hockey
Oh, yeah.
players.
Yeah, definitely. Miracle was, yeah.
So, a lot of people around the movie, like for Tyner and I think when we were going to people asking them if they wanted to be involved, etc., they didn't really know what to expect. They didn't know how serious of a production it was, etc. Some of the other guys, we budgeted some money for your part, not a ton, and no offense, I'm trying to tell everybody, not a ton, but a lot of the guys were our friends that we were paying peanuts to be there because it's just how we could allocate the budget. And so I think that it wasn't that easy to recruit for. But so what did you think though coming in, like knowing, what we're giving you, like you're going to Charleston for 2 weeks, like where was your head at?
Right. Yeah. It was funny because, I've this was like the first feature film I've done, and like, my background is in theater, and I'm still very new to the kind of film and TV world. So it was funny being like the actor flown in from LA to to star in this movie, and being like, that's I don't know. I didn't feel like that high and mighty. It's like, oh, here comes the big LA guy. They're paying to fly in here. So it was kind of funny being, having so little experience. Um, but not many people did on that set, which was a lot of fun. And being like, yeah, I have acting experience, but like I haven't done a movie, and like, none of us have really done a movie before, except, the crew like obviously knew what they were doing, but a lot of the players were just, your guys' friends, and it was this group of guys.
I was going to say, trying to figure out that process together, like made the set sort of familial in a way, like because a lot of us already knew each other, and that we were all just like I know I've talked about in some discussion recently about how, we could figure out scenes together. Like no one was upset if somebody didn't know what to do right away. I mean, like you were by far the most prepared person.
Right. Which is funny. But yeah, there was this, I was nervous coming in, but there was this feeling once I was there of like, okay, yeah, we're all just kind of figuring this out together. Um, yeah, it was a really cool kind of environment to be in, where everyone is just kind of like, everyone's doing their best. Everyone's trying to work it, and yeah, it was super fun.
So Tyler and I know talked about in our first episode with kind of like origin story and how the shoot went and everything. Um, in terms of like our schedule, on shoot days, the regular like 12 to 12 shoot days were like 10 a.m. to 3 to 6 a.m. for us. And I'm curious, like, what were those days like from your perspective? And just for some more context for the audience, like I'd say, you know, 12 of our 15 shooting days were like right around 12 to 12 for the actors to actually shoot.
Right. Yeah, and I
So
kept,
yeah, what were those days like for you?
it was cool. Like, and I kept thinking like, oh man, like 2 weeks of 12-hour days, this is crazy. But then I think about you guys who were there like, hours before I got there and were there hours after I left. Um, but yeah, I
It
stayed
was a
in
fun
a
time.
hotel. Yeah, I stayed in a hotel like pretty much right down the road. Um, Dalton was my roommate, our gaffer, right? That was his title. And he was great.
I didn't realize you
Um,
guys were roommates. That's cool.
yeah, it was me and Dalton. He was great. And I mean, yeah, I came in like 10 a.m. I guess, and like have breakfast. There was some food there in that kind of crafty room or whatever, and we'd get all the Polly's pies would go into our locker room, and we'd get our gear on, and yeah, I guess about noon we'd start shooting, and it was just kind of there was a lot of waiting around because there was a lot of setup and getting ready for the next shot, but once we were out there shooting, it was such a blast. Like I had this weird feeling like when I got back, when I flew home, and I was like, oh, I just kind of like did my dream job for 2 weeks, and now I'm like going back to my regular life.
Oh man, I think we all experienced that after that set. Like Rizzo keeps reminding us of when he was like we were on the set, Rizzo first AD and producer, saying like, are we having the time of our lives? Like to people. And it's like, yes, we are. It was amazing. And like you talked about, kind of the Polly's guys getting to the room and stuff. And I felt like extra lucky and fortunate to be both a member of Polly's Pies as well as like, in the production crew and on, the producing team. So I kind of got that window into both.
Yeah. Was that a challenge for you at all to kind of have a foot in each thing and try to, or was it just kind of, double the fun? Like,
I think it was all for it was certainly all for the best in terms of like, yeah, I guess it can cause some conflict. I'm kind of like on both sides of the line. But for the most part, I think it was like, when when the Polly's guys would be complaining about how much our feet hurt or like other silly things, like I could then voice that to the producers
that's true. Yeah.
there were a couple of shooting days that like I don't want to get too specific about that were very rough on us, that were physical. And there was a time we were all unhappy. So it was like I could personally tell the other producers exactly what like our guys were feeling.
Right. Right. We had
So
a
I
direct
loved it. I mean, I
line
loved
to
all
the
that.
top.
I loved all that time on the bench together.
Oh yeah.
Tyner was so busy regardless, so he didn't always get to hang around the bench. But yeah, I just remember like, in the camera, you don't see anything that's actually like on the little shelving in front of the bench or whatever, but it was like banana peels and
That's right.
empty
Yeah.
coffees and
The
stuff
the
like
little
that.
the shelf behind the bench for water bottles had, everyone's phone was there, like
Yeah.
Red Bulls, coffee cups, yeah, a bunch of
It
snacks.
was like a home for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we
We had our
tried,
little
we,
stations.
we quickly realized that we needed to start cleaning up more and, to respect the amazing Ice Palace who let us be there. And we did. We got it together pretty quickly on that. But yeah, it was awesome. And I think that it comes through in the movie. And I'm curious, like now that it's out there, we're currently available to buy or rent on Prime Video. How do you feel about, the finished product compared to where you came in, compared to where the last time you saw it?
Yeah. It was so cool to see the finished product because, I'd seen, since we wrapped, that was like a year and a half ago. Um, every once in a while we'd get these little breadcrumbs where during the editing process, Tyner would send like, oh, here's a little clip, or oh, here's a little bit of this. Um, so I kind of had like a general idea of like what the shape of it was going to be. And then a few months ago, you had me in a studio in LA to do some ADR, like recording audio dialogue. And you showed me like a rough cut, I guess. Not a rough cut, but like a not quite finished. So I saw it like without color grading and without, some of the music finalized. Um, but to actually watch it like on my TV, like, sitting there with my family, like seeing it like fully realized, it was just super cool and like a little weird to watch myself, um, slightly, but so fun. And just, seeing it all, it just looked so good, like with the color grading and the editing. And I don't know, it was super weird to be like, oh yeah, I remember that day, I remember shooting that scene, and now it's part of this, it's part of this larger whole. It was just really a cool experience to see the final thing.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. You have to the whole watching yourself thing. You got to get used to. I know a lot of actors just can't do it.
Right,
Um,
yeah, it's interesting.
you
I feel
know,
like you just kind of have to get over it.
I
But
agree. And one thing that has always come up for me, like when I watch it, is like, because most of us kind of knew each other, like you, Alec, kind of had the Riley experience, and I thought that was beneficial.
it was, yeah. And like, I'm not a big uh advocate for like method acting or anything. Like, you hear stories of people going to weird lengths to put themselves in the character. But that said, like, me coming in to the shoot was almost a parallel for Riley, like as the new guy. So it was fun to kind of like use that almost, and it kind of made it easier to be like, okay, I don't have to do a big transformation. Like, Riley is pretty similar to myself. Um, so that kind of made it easier to kind of find the character in a way. Yeah.
And I think that comes through in the scenes. Like I think that, especially like in the end of the game locker room scene, like for me, like even though we filmed those on the same day, like for me, just your acting, like I can feel sort of the tension in the first part, like this, the anxiety, the discomfort, and then you're very much warm to the group. You're part of the group at the end, and it's always like heartwarming for me, especially because like I like how Riley like feels a little bad for Kevin, even though Kevin's been such a pain in the ass to him. But then, and we know that in real life, you also feel bad for Kevin.
That's true. That's true.
So yeah, let's talk like the dynamic and the guys. Like, what did you think? Because you could have gone to a place where you're spending 2 weeks with a bunch of shitheads, and I don't think that was your perspective.
No, it was so cool, like to, a little bit intimidating, but I got over it quickly to kind of, join this group that, already has such rapport and like, such great like banter. And like it worked so well for, even though none of them are like, experienced film actors, like there's already so much chemistry there already. Like they're already so naturally funny talking to each other. And I feel like that really comes through in the final thing, watching it and being like, oh, this is like, it works so well already. And it was funny. Like, I know the Kevin type, but there were some moments where I was like, oh my God, like, Kevin, are you all right? Like, these guys are ribbing you so hard. Um, but yeah, just kind of, I don't
Yeah,
know, feeling out the group dynamic and kind of finding my place in it was a lot of fun. And it was cool to kind of again parallel that journey for Riley, kind of finding his
yeah,
place in the group. Um, but yeah, I don't think it could have worked better if you did like handpick, you know, actors who could play hockey and like try and get them to play these
yeah,
roles. Like it was already kind of already baked in there with this group, which I think was really cool.
yeah. I agree. I think that natural cohesion is tough to match.
And it just, it felt so kind of naturalistic in a way, like, sort of a slice of life. Like it was very real.
And we talked about this a little bit early in the conversation, but what is your current relationship with hockey? Like, are you on a team? Are you going to the rink?
Yeah. Yeah. As I mentioned, like I moved out here after school and like, tried to, audition for stuff, find some work. I got a day job and I suddenly had, all this free time. I wasn't taking classes or anything. Um, I started going to pickup games, and I got out my old gear, and some of it was, super gross. I started getting some new stuff and like slowly getting back into it. And then I hadn't joined a team. I was still just playing pickup and stuff when I did the late game. But then since then, I've kind of gotten even further into it. So in a way, this sort of helped me
That's
get
awesome.
even further back into hockey. Yeah, I've joined a team out here in a beer league, so that's been super fun. Um,
I love that. Are you
and
talking
yeah,
about the movie with them?
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I was kind of coy about it at first. I didn't want to be like, oh yeah, guys, I'm in this movie about beer league. But one of them stumbled across it naturally and was like, "This is you," and I was like, "Yeah." So that's been
That
fun.
sounds like the way you would tell someone.
Right, right.
Very humble.
It's been cool to kind of see the word get out there naturally. But yeah, I've been really getting back into it, and I've been getting back into watching hockey as well. So that's been great, kind of rediscovering that passion.
How much has your gear changed since the movie? So
Yeah,
everybody
that's
used
funny.
all their own gear in the movie. That's important to
Right,
remind
right.
everybody, which is
And
a real aspect of it.
right, I have slowly been kind of replacing some stuff, especially like visible gear. Like I have new gloves. I use a different stick now. Um, I've gotten new skates.
Well, the skates
And
are
it's
were your
funny
number
because
one sort of trademark, I
that's
think, because
right. Yeah,
like
the old
if you
Reebok
were still wearing
skates.
them, people would be like, "You're the guy from the late game."
Right, right.
Like,
And what's funny is I've kept all the stuff that I wore in the movie though, like just in case. I'm like, what if, what if we ever need to like do a flashback or something? Like, what if there's more late game content and we need to like still see this stuff? So I'm
thank you
still
for
holding on to it
not
just
like
in
us
case.
not asking, but yeah.
Right. But that's also a good way to show that like, time has passed. Like, if there's ever a sequel or anything, like, oh yeah, Riley's got new gear now. Like, he's been playing for a while.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, Tyler and I love gear. We both worked in the pro shop at the Ice Palace, and yeah. So no, I always thought your skates were fun. Like it just all worked out. Like a lot of the things worked out. There were certain gear choices we made for the movie, but for the most part, we let everybody kind of just have their real life sort of gear style. Although my character John Calamino, he had distinct gear. He is very much the matchy type. So,
Yeah. The
um,
team color
but
gloves and shell.
I think that I'm gonna actually start wearing my Calamino gear though in my beer league game, so I can advertise
Nice.
just like he would. Except
Right,
I'm advertising
yeah.
for the
There you
movie,
go.
not for my dentistry.
Not for John Calamina Dentistry. Yeah,
Right,
that's good
right.
kind of
But
guerrilla marketing.
yeah, and it's not as Riley to do that, but like feel free to tell people about it.
Sure, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Like, oh, you like these
Um,
skates? Oh, well, they're featured in this cool movie you might have heard of.
right. So we've talked about like sort of how there's kind of a year and a half between we finished shooting when we finished the movie. Um, and I know I very much remember this for myself, like kind of being on a high, leaving, and we said, they're kind of get a little bit of the blues leaving a set in general. Um, but yeah, like how much were you thinking about the late game over that year and a half? It's obviously a long time, and Tyler and I were working on it a lot during the time. Him especially, thousands of hours on editing. So it was very different for us. I'm curious what that waiting period was like for you.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting being, I mean, for you guys it was, you thought about it all the time because you're still working on it. You like post-production is still, you're still hard at work finishing it. But, this is my first time, acting in a movie, and I'm used to theater where, you're in it until everybody's done. And then like, once you close, like all the actors go their separate ways and like all the crew move on to other stuff. But it was funny being rapping and being like, it's out of my hands. Like people are going to keep working on this for a long time, but I don't have to worry about it. But I did obviously keep thinking about it. We have the Polly's Pies group chat, and anytime anyone would like, it was cool to just kind of keep up that way. And like, Tyner would send little things and like, oh, here's a little clip. And I'd be like, oh yeah, that's still going. People are still hard at work on that. Um, and it was funny being
Yeah, I can
like,
imagine it was exciting, like to get any update.
yeah, yeah. I loved just, oh, it's still, people are still working on it. It's coming out someday. And it was funny, like, after I shot it, people were like, oh, when's that movie you shot like gonna come out? And I was like, at some point, it's like, I don't know.
Then they
So,
forgot about it,
and then they forgot about it. And then, I thought about it less, but then like having it ramp back up recently where it's like, oh, we're getting really close, and being able to tell people about it again when it's like finally going to come to fruition. Um, it was a really cool kind of process in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I remember when we shot, you were working at the rink. Do you still work there?
I do. Yes. Yeah. My day job is at my local rink out here. I drive the Zamboni. I work
That's
the skate
amazing, man.
rental
They're gonna,
counter. Yeah.
your price might have to go up with them as people come to see,
That's
Alec from the
true.
late game.
That's true. Yeah. We should.
But what's
I'll
the
have to
rink
have a
called? Can
rink
we give him a shout
advertisement.
out?
I can. Yeah. It's Pickwick Ice Center in Burbank, California, and it's actually it's affiliated with the LA Kings as well. So the Kings organization kind of owns or is partnered with a few local rinks out here. Um, but it's a great little rink, one sheet of ice. It's been here since like the '60s, and yeah, super great rink. I love the people that work there. Um, you could do worse for a part-time job you know for an actor. And in the summer it's nice and cool. So
Oh yeah. And speaking of that, tell us about the play that you just completed.
oh sure, yeah, I did a production of Once, which is a musical based on a movie. And it's one of my favorite movies. I love Once a lot. I love the music in it. It's got kind of a folk soundtrack.
I'm familiar with it, but I have not seen it, unfortunately. I saw like the videos you posted of you performing, which were fantastic. Like I didn't know you could sing and play the guitar, and it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was so fun. I do have kind of like a musical theater background, and that was kind of a dream role for a while. I love that movie and the show. I saw it. I saw one of the touring productions in DC years ago. Um, but yeah, it was a great run. We did 3 weekends. We were talking about this earlier. I grew out my beard to kind of uh, have that look. I was the Irish, street musician, guitar player. Um, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, great show.
Yeah, I mean that's really cool that you got to do like one of your dream shows.
Right. Yeah, and coming off of that, like right into the release of this movie, it's been such a fun past couple months, kind of having those back to back. Just two great projects.
It's an exciting time in your acting career, and I won't be surprised to see you on many more stages and screens, whichever you prefer to be on. I don't know. Do you have a preference? Do you want to do both?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, theater is what I know more, just because I've done more of it. I would love to try to break into more film and TV stuff as well. We'll see what happens.
Now you at least have somewhere to point people to see some of your film work.
Exactly. Yeah. I finally have some footage for my reel. So
You know what? We obviously have high hopes for what the late game can mean to the hockey community on an ongoing basis. Like, what is your perspective on that? What are you hoping for your experience to be with the late game long term?
yeah. Yeah, the term like, cult classic gets thrown around a lot for like movies that are like, beloved by sort of a niche group, but also like, there's like a longevity to them. So I guess, the ideal thing would be, I'd love for it to like, obviously break into the mainstream. And I think it's good enough and funny enough, and it has mainstream appeal where you don't have to be a hockey player to find it funny to enjoy it. Obviously, you're gonna get maybe a little more out of it if you've lived in that world. But yeah, I think if people latch onto it, if people find it funny, and I think it can kind of have a shelf life as like the beer league movie, because as you guys have talked about, like there isn't really anything else like that. All the hockey movies are on bigger stages, or bigger rinks. You think of Miracle, and like I don't know, Mighty Ducks is more of a kids movie, kind of Disney, that area. But just kind of an adult hockey comedy, like it's such a niche thing, but also I think it can kind of have that longevity as sort of a cult classic if people grab onto it, which I think people are starting to. So it's cool to see, and I guess that's the hope for what I think of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. People are feeling good about it, especially if they played hockey. I mean, we've gotten just really cool feedback from beer leaguers that are just like, I feel like I know every guy on that team. Like I know this guy is that guy on my team, and that's just like rewarding for us to hear. And
I think Tyner, that's a testament to you as the writer. And I remember reading the script for the first time when you sent it to me and being like, okay, a hockey movie, is this going to feel like it was written by a hockey player? And it absolutely was. Like, it you can tell it was written by someone who lives in that world, and I think that carried through all the way to the final product.
yeah, it, that's been like probably my favorite part of just the rewarding aspect of showing people, people getting to see it is just hockey people talking about it, telling us that their team relates to it and stuff. You know that that's been awesome. And this episode will come out afterwards, but I still want to bring up, you're going to come to your first public screening this week, this Friday, March 8th in St. Paul, Minnesota, with Let's Play Hockey Inc. Are you excited to kind of have your first public screening?
I'm so excited. I had kind of this FOMO thing where I was in the play that we were talking about, and I had to miss the cast and crew screening in Charleston, and then I had to miss the first kind of public screening in New Jersey. So I was like, oh dang it, like, oh, I wish I could be there. So to finally be able to kind of come out and kind of see this show on the road, I'm so pumped.
Yeah, it should be a good time. And Let's Play Hockey Inc. has this huge expo. I think it's the biggest like hockey vendor expo that exists, at least in the US. And that'll be super interesting. And I think we'll meet a lot of cool hockey people. And yeah, I'm excited to get you at an event. We certainly missed you a lot at the other ones, but we're just going to make the most out of the ones that you can make it to.
Yeah, I'm so pumped. And like, this is such it's this is like hockey territory, right? Like we're going into the heart of it all. So
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota is definitely like the hockey state in the US. So I'm excited for it from that perspective too. It's like kind of a vibe you get sometimes in places like Toronto, where hockey is just like a truly a part of life. And I feel like Minnesota offers that in a way as well. That always, as a hockey person who came from, especially me, like us coming from the South, where we were sometimes alienated because we were hockey fans, like to go into that environment is like feels good.
right. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
We didn't get any free time during the screening. I mean, the shoot, you didn't really get any free time during the shoot. Did you get to like see Charleston at all? I know, like, well, actually, first let's talk about when you first came, because I think you stay with me and my wife and my son
I did,
for the
yeah.
first night.
The
Yeah.
first night I flew in, and I forget what time I got in, but I think it was
It was
dark. It was
late.
a
I
night
went and picked
time.
you up. Yeah.
Yeah, it was late. I stepped out of the airport and just, felt the humidity instantly. I was
Yep.
sweating. I was like, oh, yes. Because I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in Virginia, right near DC, that area. So I was kind of aware of it. But it had been a while. I was like, okay, yeah, this is that humidity. um, and yeah, you picked me up and drove me to your place, and it was kind of weird. Like, it was nighttime. We were driving through like, you know, South Carolina, and your place is like
Yeah.
really nice. Like,
And we'd
so
also like, it was our first time meeting in person, so it's like kind of a strange circumstance for your first
right,
meeting in
right,
person.
yeah. Um,
um,
and
but
then
then I remember the
and then
next morning we went downtown to take the picture for the save
that's
the
right.
date that's in the movie.
Yes, yeah, yeah. We got right to work, and that was my first time seeing Tyner because he came to take that picture. Um,
Yep.
and that was fun to just kind of see downtown.
Yeah.
Um, very
My
nice,
son had the huge
lovely
meltdown in
city.
the coffee place. I don't know if you
I
remember
remember
that.
that. I remember that. Yeah. Oh, that
Oh
was
man.
fun.
Yeah,
How's he
that
doing?
was a time. He's awesome. Keelan is awesome. He's gonna be
Nice.
4 soon, and
Oh,
we've got a 1-year-old boy as well. So yeah. Did you get to see Charleston anymore beyond, like, obviously went downtown for a little bit that day, but I know we took one day off from shooting, but maybe you were sleeping.
right. I did get to see a little bit. I hung out with some of the crew on that one day off. Um, Dalton, our gaffer, Jacob Fuller, the focus puller. I just realized that rhymes. And Zoe and Josiah. And we all drove down and hung out. I think we went to a bar in Charleston and kind of hung out. And I think it was raining that day, so there was like a flood watch or something, and we're like, okay, well, let's be careful. Um, but I did get to see a little bit of Charleston proper, and I had a great time. It was a great city, even though most of the time it was just North Charleston. I mostly saw that stretch of road between the rink and the hotel. It was nice to kind of take it easy for a day and hang out and see the sights.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to work that out. And like I know the drive I took, in between where I was staying and the rink very much became like it was just kind of like a fugue state almost because of how tired we were. Like I I guess I was like, I was safely driving, I was awake, but I was also just like in this zone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, it's been awesome so far working with you on the late game. I hope it's something we're always working on and building together. Like, do you have any other sort of thoughts or perspectives you want to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Yeah, just that I like how ongoing it's been. Like, when I first got involved, I was like, okay, this is cool. Like, I'm gonna do a movie. Like, I'll fly down there for 2 weeks and I'll come back and that'll be that. But like to be like continually involved, and I thank you guys for this as well. For like, you keep like, and obviously this is how it's gonna go. I just didn't think of it, but like, as we release, like, it's kind of this ongoing thing where of course we have to talk it up on podcasts, and of course we have to like go to do screenings and stuff. So that was kind of like a pleasant surprise, I guess. So I'm excited to, even though we shot it a year and a half ago, I'm super pumped to like keep talking about it and like keep working on it as this ongoing thing. So I guess that was kind of a big takeaway I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that and love that. Um, and I also like my sort of takeaway from this conversation. I love that you sort of lived a Riley like experience in terms of getting back into hockey. And like now, I mean, I think it's awesome that after shooting the late game, you then joined a beer league team.
Right. Yeah. It felt kind of backwards almost. Like, I now get to live all the experiences from the movie after I've done it. Like, it's
But it worked because you were kind of fish out of water in the movie. And like especially for beer leaguers who haven't played in a while that I've talked to that have watched it, they're like, damn, it really makes me want to get back out there. And to like see that live through you, I think is really cool. And it also is like rewarding for us, I think, to bring that to the game. Because really, when you haven't played in a while, you don't really get it again until you play again, until you force yourself or convince yourself to go again. So hopefully if we can give people a little bit of a window into that without having to actually get to the rink, maybe that'll spark them.
that would be great. Yeah. Yeah. I remember my first time playing after like almost 5 years and just being like, oh yeah, like, I don't know. I felt so alive. I was like, yep, it's all coming back. So if we can push people into kind of rediscovering that love for hockey, that would be amazing.
Yeah, agreed. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I'm sure we'll do it again, and look forward to working with you as we continue to launch the late game. And
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, absolutely. And everybody watching or listening can check out the late game on Prime Video. Just search the late game, and you'll get to see an amazing performance by Alec Reusch here.